Good morning, everyone. For those of you I haven't had the pleasure of meeting yet, my name is Lynn Gidluck, and I have the privilege of leading the Community Engagement and Research Center at the University of Regina. While we're meeting today in this weird but wonderful virtual setting, my physical office is located in beautiful Treaty 4 territory. CERC is committed to move beyond words to meaningful action towards reconciliation through the work we do with and on behalf of community. Now, I'm back working on campus, and I welcome visitors anytime to my office, which is close to the main doors of the classroom building. We're on the southwest corner of campus here. But my unofficial office, though, is the Stone's Throw Cafe, which is across the street from campus. I often have meetings there so community partners don't have to pay for parking. And because it's really easy to get lost on campus here. Well, many of you know me through my role in hosting these free professional development sessions. This is only one small aspect of what I do. Please don't hesitate to consider me your help desk. If you have any questions about doing research with the university or anything related to community campus engagement or partnerships, if you have a research need or are just looking for a friendly person to help you figure out where in the university to turn to, I'm sincere when I say I'm here to help. Through the job, this job, I get to meet so many great people that all have the same goal of improving the communities they live in or identify with. And honestly, I'm happiest when I have the chance to make introductions to people who then end up collaborating with each other. I really miss the opportunities we had in the past with our Toolkit workshops, though, to meet people face to face and offer attendees the chance to network with each other. And others that are doing similar work. Now, some of you may have attended our session in the spring where we tried to kind of offer a hybrid model. Since the vast majority of the people who attended chose to join by Zoom. And to be frank, we had a number of kind of embarrassing technical glitches. We decided, to continue to go virtual for these kinds of sessions. But we are not giving up on the idea of bringing people together for in-person events. I'd like you to please consider marking Thursday, December 8th from 3:30 to 5:30 on your calendars. We're very excited to be working with Colleen Strow with Luther College's nonprofit and voluntary sector studies network and people from the university's new Center for Experiential and Service Learning on what we hope will be a fun networking event at our College Avenue campus. So join us to kick off the holiday season and hear some short elevator pictures about people, programs, and resources that you can access here at the university. We promise the event will be a chance to eat some good food, visit with your colleagues, and hopefully meet some people from the university that can help in the important work that you're doing. So I'm pleased today, though, to welcome you to the first session in a year-long series of online workshops aimed at helping you improve organizational culture and better serve diverse community members through the work you do. Early in the pandemic, I reached out to Pauline Street, who is the senior advisor to the president of our university on equity, diversity, inclusion, and anti-oppression. I knew from conversations I had with a number of community partners that many organizations really wanted to take meaningful steps to make their workplaces and governing bodies more inclusive and diverse. They didn't know where to start, and that's where Pauline came in. She delivered 3 amazing sessions, which we uploaded to our YouTube channel, and you can find the links to these recordings on the CERC webpage. I got such great feedback from Pauline's sessions, and she was such a delight to work with, that we decided to work together to offer 8 workshops on a variety of topics this year related to equity, diversity, and inclusion. So between now and next spring. So, and even better, Pauline was able to convince the president to sponsor these sessions. So between the president's office and our other sponsor, the fantastic South Saskatchewan Community Foundation, we're able to continue to offer sessions like the one you're attending today at no cost. Pauline is here today with us. So I just want to let her say a couple of words on behalf of the president's office before we turn things over to Ricardo to begin the presentation. Pauline, are you?
I'm here.
Here, take it away.
Good morning, everyone. Just on behalf of the president's office, I cannot express how happy we are to sponsor this initiative. The close linkage that it has to equity, diversity, inclusion is quite phenomenal. And I have to give Lynn high praise for pulling this together and making this a reality. I will not be able to stay, but I do know that the outcomes of today will be closely aligned with my job function. And Ricardo, I'm going to listen to a little bit of your presentation, but I think this is going to be a phenomenal experience for all of you. And again, on behalf of the President's Office, we are pleased and thrilled to support this initiative.
Thank you, Pauline. And with no further ado, I'm pleased to introduce you to Ricardo Arisnabarretta. I won't read his full biography for you, but I'll post it in the chat box for you. Ricardo's day job is with the Regina Open Door Society, but he also teaches Spanish in the International Language Department. He's a PhD student. He's a dad to 3 busy little people. Like, honestly, I get tired just thinking about it. How incredibly busy he is. And for those of you that don't know, Ricardo is also married to one of my favorite people at the university. That would be the lovely Colleen Stroud from Luther. So with no further ado, Ricardo, take it away.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much for that kind introduction. Thank you, Pauline, for making a little bit of time. I know how busy you must be. Let me start by going with the protocol with any presentation. I'm extremely excited to be able to talk about this. And I know that this is the regular protocol, but in my case, it really is incredible to have the opportunity to share what I study, what I do research on, right? This is not something that I can go to Tim Hortons and say to the person, hey, listen, there are a couple of fascinating things that you need to know in your daily life. So having the opportunity to share this, it's really great. I'm going to be talking about microaggressions. I think that many of you have an idea, that is my assumption, right, of what they are and how they manifest, right? And I will try to provide some tools on how to address them. This workshop is going to be a little bit different from regular workshops for different reasons. One of those is because of my cultural background. I need to have the interaction with people, right? Another reason why this workshop is going to be different is because I do want to hear from you. I do want to have your input, because that's going to help me continue navigating my PhD. And I do want this to be meaningful for you. I know that you're giving some of your time for this. So I'm going to tell you what we're going to cover. There will be 4 parts for today's presentation. 3 are the meat and potatoes, and the last one is questions and the reference, right? The first one, I'm going to try to set up the scope of the specific part where we're going to zoom in for microaggressions. We're going to talk about how they manifest, how to respond to them. They seem to be important to have ideas how to respond to them. And then at the end, we are going to talk about anything that you guys would like to do. It is really important that everybody feels welcome in this environment. I am going to touch very sensitive topics, right? And I am not describing right or wrong. I am not the moral compass to tell you what you should do or you shouldn't do, or what happens in society. I'm just describing and showing, right, with lenses, what happens every day. That's it, right? You will decide whether that is right or wrong. So moving on, we're gonna go with the first part, right? For the first part, in this first part, we are going to watch a couple of videos. Actually, we're gonna watch 3 videos, and Colleen is gonna present those videos soon. Please pay attention to those videos, because you're going to have a group work activity. Those videos are very short videos. We're going to define microaggressions, we're going to see how they manifest, and we're going to pay attention to the intersection, right? Later, these videos are going to make sense, and we're going to go back to these videos over and over again, probably during the presentation. Is that okay? So before we move into the videos, can you guys hear me well? Is my volume okay? Do you want me to speak up? Do you want me to slow down? Is anybody having problems with the way I'm speaking, with my accent? Do you want me to speak a little bit slower or louder? Please do let me know. Feel free to write that on the chat. I have no problems with that, but I cannot read the chat. Somebody will have to let me know that. All right. Thank you.
Great.
Awesome.
Sounds great, Ricardo.
Awesome. So let's go with the first activity. You're going to be in group of 3 or 4, right? After this activity. So please watch and or listen to these videos if you cannot watch them because you're doing something else at home or in your offices. And take notes if you like. You don't have to, but I suggest that you take notes, right? I want you to pay attention to 2 things with these videos, all right? I want you to pay attention to what they say, right? What's happening there, and I want you to tell me how you feel, right, with what you hear. Those 2 things are important, right? What they say and how you feel about this. And that's it. So we're gonna go with the first video with McQueen, and Colleen will. Do I need to stop sharing for that? We cannot hear.
Morning, sleeping beauty. Boy, I was wondering when you was gonna wake up.
Take whatever you want. Just don't hurt me. A parking boot? Why do I have a parking boot on? What's going on here, please?
You're funny. I like you already. My name's Mater.
Mater?
Yeah, like Mater, but without the tuh. What's your name?
You don't know my name?
No, I know your name. Is your name Mater too?
What? Look, I need to get to California as fast as possible. Where am I?
Where are you?
Realized the complex was on fire.
Well, I woke up to go get me a cold pop, and then I thought somebody was barbecuing. I said, oh, Lord Jesus, it's a fire. Then I ran out. I didn't grab no shoes or nothing, Jesus. I ran for my life. And then the smoke got me. I got bronchitis. Ain't nobody got time for that.
According to the apartment
to our correspondent there, Ian Palmer. Ian, it's been an on and off again day for the airport with the runway opening and closing. What's the latest situation there now?
Well, the latest is that the airport remains open. You may remember that there was a delay in flights here at Gatwick sometime in the afternoon when they closed the runway until 3 o'clock just to clear the snow and ice. It reopened again just after 3 when there was a Virgin Atlantic flight that took off to Antigua with 450 people on board. Very good for them.
All right, thank you very much. Now you guys are gonna go and work in groups of 3 or 4, and I want you to answer the questions that I ask. So Colleen, could you please put people in groups? Remember, so wait a minute. Sorry, I'm trying to find. This obviously has to happen when we work and we use technology. I'm trying to find out. I'm trying to see my PowerPoint, but I don't see it. Is there a reason why I don't see my PowerPoint? Is there something I need to do?
You will need to share your screen.
Yeah, but it doesn't come up. Sorry.
Another alternative, Ricardo, is to just post the questions in the chat box if you're able to do that.
Yeah. So I'm gonna give you the directions, and while you work in groups, we're gonna talk about these. I'm gonna solve this glitch. So you're gonna work in groups, and I want you to do these things. So please take note. The first one is introduce yourself, right? I want you to let one another know who you are. The second thing that I want you to do is to tell each other why you're attending this workshop. We're going to set up this scope, right? Give me 2 reasons why you're attending this workshop, 2 things that you hope to get out of this workshop. Share 1 thing that you hope that you are not going to hear or see, that you don't want in this workshop. You don't want this workshop to be. And last but not least, you're going to talk about those videos. I want you to tell me how you feel, how these videos made you feel when you watch these videos. There seems to be no connection whatsoever with these 3 videos, but how do you feel when you listened to these 3 interactions, right? So again, introduce yourself. Right? Why are you attending 2 things that you hope to get, 1 thing that you don't want in this workshop, and your reactions to these videos. Those are 4 things, and you're gonna have 4 minutes, right? So you need to be quick. And I will solve the keynote issue while you guys are working on this. So ready whenever you guys are ready. So
now we can see it.
Cully, I think Christine just joined us late, so if you could assign her to one of the groups, that would be great.
For sure.
I'm sorry about the not being able to see the keynote. For some reason, the file shut down.
Oh, no worries.
It's all good.
Yeah, I mean, it was very, I think, pretty straightforward what you asked people to do, so I think they will have it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, sorry.
I keep bouncing back.
Oh, sorry about that, Christine. Let me try to move you again.
Please. Thank you.
All right. I know.
Did you get a message to join?
No, I'm okay.
Oh, then we've got somebody else that just joined that will need to be assigned.
Hi, Amanda. Thank you for joining. We are currently working on an activity. You have not watched those videos, so do not worry about it, right? You're not missing anything important whatsoever. but there are a few questions that people are going to discuss. I think it's going to be very important for you to at least pay attention to the discussions so that you will be able to connect with the other points being made later. So you're going to be assigned into a group, right? And do not worry much about it. Is that okay? Thank you. All right, we have a couple more people. We have Milagros.
Lori, you were, oh, looks like we've got a couple other people. Lori, were you kicked out of a waiting room or?
Oh, your guys done.
Oh, okay, so if we could put Milagros and Lori into a group.
For
calling-
sure. Yeah.
All right. Milagros, just to provide some context, Milagros, I don't know if you were here before. Oh, never mind. She's already in a group. And Lori, did you watch the videos before?
No, she indicated, I think, that she hadn't.
Yeah, I think, well, it's 22 minutes after, so I think if Lori, you don't mind just waiting here for a minute, and we'll have to bring people back in like 1 minute. Ricardo, we'll see.
Yeah, so that's okay. Don't.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lori. I'm sorry for the inconvenience. Right. And Donna. Welcome, Donna.
Oh, good morning. I'm super sorry to be late. I just had a family emergency that I was attending to.
You don't need to worry about it. You're not missing a lot right now. There is an activity right now happening that unfortunately you cannot participate in right now because we have in a minute, right? But don't you worry. You will understand what this activity and how this activity connects to the rest later. And right now the activity is basically for people to be able to bring thoughts back.
So I closed the room, so everyone will be coming back here.
Okay, entiendo. Thank you.
Good. Why do I?
Sorry, can I go back to my room? I clicked on the button by accident.
All right. Everybody's.
Or are we supposed to come back now?
Yes.
Okay.
Meeting is being recorded.
Okay, perfect. All right, guys. Awesome. So the goal of this activity will be shared later, so don't you worry. People tend to feel uncomfortable when there is a lot of unknown, and trust me, it will make sense quickly. There were 4 things that I asked you to do, right? And I hope that everybody had the opportunity to do those things, right? I wanted to know what you're attending apart from introducing yourself. I wanted to know what you expect to get from this workshop, and I wanted to know what you don't expect to get from this workshop, and I wanted you to comment on those videos. So now I want you to, and I'm going to do this, share your group thoughts, right? Anybody, I just need 3 people to volunteer and tell me what you guys talked about. Nothing bad is happening. Just share that with me.
Well, hi, it's Anne-Marie from one of the groups. Oh, sorry. Am I okay to talk?
Yeah, please do. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah, in our group, I think we were all wanting to learn, you know, how to better handle recognize microaggressions and how to better handle them, and to just be better people, better human beings, I guess. One thing that we didn't want to hear, and I think all of us sort of the same thing, we didn't want to hear anything disrespectful from anyone. With the videos, it was kind of, some of us were having a hard time hearing what was being said, and it was cutting in and out, but I think all of us were struggling to just how subtle, we were looking for microaggressions, I guess, and I mean, that's what I thought I was supposed to be doing. And it was kind of really hard to kind of see what those were, I guess, or to pick them out. I wasn't really, none of us were really confident that we had, I guess I'm speaking for the group or myself, I guess none of us were feeling very confident that we knew what they were, if that's what we were supposed to be doing.
I love what you just shared. It's gold for me. And it will make, I promise it will make sense shortly, right? It's gold for me, right? You were trying to understand microaggressions there, right? Good. And that, I think that is key. And I love the fact that you said that you did not want this to be disrespectful, right? You don't want to hear disrespectful people. So I love that too. Awesome. So who is next? I need another volunteer.
Ricardo, this is Pauline. I will gladly speak on some of what was said during my group. So my group, we were pretty good about why the attendees are here, and they want to learn about microaggressions. There was also realizations that were shared, and one is life circumstance sometimes seems to create a space for microaggressions, whether the recipient or the person delivering microaggressions. So there's an understanding of what they are. We talked about what we didn't want to hear in the workshop, and many of what was said was mirrored and echoed by many. So they don't want to hear people's issues. Okay, so if people have a concern or they've been if they've experienced microaggressions, microassaults, what have you, it's that we can talk about what microaggressions are, but we don't want to hear personal pains consistently. So that was one of the things that was said. The other is that the training that you're delivering and the content you're delivering is valuable, but there is a hope that this is not put on school children, because, to quote, old people can learn too. And after the videos, there was a realization that accents were difficult to understand and to hear. And the individual indicate they recognize potential bias towards accents. And that was my group.
Oh my gosh, your group. Your group is ahead here in this game, Pauline. This is awesome. Yes, the bias, right? Good. I don't wanna go ahead in the presentation right now. You did, right? So I'm gonna ask the third group, and then you guys will see the connections between the first group, Pauline's group, and hopefully the third group as well. So a third volunteer, the last volunteer, who would like to share?
Well, I can share. In our group, we all work in multicultural or multicultural groups or off workplaces. And when I say multicultural, one of our group members, it may not be like multicultural in terms of nationhood, but different approaches and abilities. So what I found interesting, we're all kind of attending, realizing that there are different cultures and different ways of behaving in different cultures, and therefore what might be a microaggression in one culture is not necessarily a microaggression in another, and so just to be aware of those boundaries. And then when most of us didn't have one thing we hoped not to hear, but we didn't want to hear any hateful language. And then in terms of videos, we all saw them from a different perspective.
Oh.
Yeah, so we all saw different things in the videos that we considered even though we were all looking for microaggressions, we all saw different things. And so one was accents, one was words, one was economic, and yeah, so it's interesting.
Oh, that's actually very, very interesting that you guys saw it from a different perspective. And I wish we would have extra time to actually pay attention to different perspectives. Unfortunately, it's just 1 hour and a few more minutes, right? And this is something that for me has taken so many years to develop. There's so much content I wish we could talk about. In the interest of time, if anybody else would like to share, I'm really sorry, but probably we will have time at the end of the presentation. I just want to make sure that I cover as much as possible. I'm happy to hear that there were different perspectives, right? So let's go with this. You share your thoughts. Let's try to go with microaggressions to understand this. And everybody was obviously hypersensitive with the videos. Everybody probably, I'm guessing, right? We're like, okay, so what am I supposed to find in these videos? What are the commonalities? What are the differences in these videos? Are people being microaggressive towards one another or not, right? And the videos were to help you identify your biases, right? Your struggles, right? You're trying to challenge your own views, but I want them to come naturally, right? And sometimes we are very hypersensitive, right? Are you aggressive or not? Should I respond? Should I not respond? Is this, how should I take this, right? What are you trying to say? Do I need to read between the lines, right? And I'm going to try to go with microaggressions. They are everyday insults, slight, indignities, and etc. that usually marginalized groups suffer more. To put it in context, right? One good example could be, imagine walking down the street, right? Or trying to, I don't know, go jogging down the street. That could be an activity that you may or may not be able to do. But imagine that you have no shoes. And imagine that you have Legos, many pieces of Legos on the floor. Marginalized people are jogging with you in life, but they have this disadvantage, that no shoes, and they have these little pieces of Legos that they step in all of the time. Some of them are going to hurt more than others. There is a moment that you don't expect to run into them, and then they hurt. And by the end of the race, you are sick and tired of it, right? And then another person turns and says like, oh my gosh, you're just complaining for nothing. Like, seriously? Like, you did what I did. We both went jogging. It's like, yeah, kind of, but you have privilege, I don't. Oh my gosh, the race card, yeah, the privileged card is like, yeah, but I had Legos and they hurt. Oh my gosh, you're too sensitive. It's like, no, it's not being too sensitive. They accumulate, right? And these microaggressions are based on gender, right? Sexual orientation, disability, religion, you name them. They are so many, right? And the ones that I will pay attention to are the language, right? Because language is connected to power, right? The way that you speak, the way that we speak is connected to power, and it gives you privilege. We do pay attention a lot to the language, but we don't talk about it. We do talk about race, we talk about gender, we talk about disability, we talk about religion, but all of them combined with language give you something else, and we will talk about it later. Right? I'm going to mention some examples of possible microaggressions that people normally see, right? Like a person from a marginalized group, right, is not able to shop in the same way that anybody else or a white person would normally do, right? Because they assume that they are going to be thieves, right? I know, and I've learned, because my wife is white, blue eyes, blonde hair, I've learned to notice that my wife and I, we behave differently when we go shopping. I'm all the time trying to make sure that people know that I'm not stealing anything. Whereas my wife is just enjoying the shopping. And I'm like, okay, do you think that I'm stealing anything? Like, should I be touching that or not? My behavior has to change so that I don't run into trouble, right? I need to be all the time proving to others that I deserve to be here. And we will talk about it later, why I need to prove to others that I deserve to be here, that I'm competent, right? Microaggressions happen when you're talking to them and they suddenly roll their eyes because you're just annoying, right? And why are you being annoying, right? Is the question. It's, oh my gosh, you're using the race car, you're using the women's car, the gender car, the immigrant car, whatever car you want to name. It's like, oh my gosh, just move on, right? But again, with the Lego example, you've been jogging for a while and you've been stepping into all of these Legos from the moment you leave your house until the moment you come back to your house. And marginalized groups, we encounter or we see more Legos than other groups. I'm not saying that other people will not run into Legos, they will, but in many cases they're wearing shoes or they have fewer Legos in their path, right? And why do I have this interest? What is my interest and what is the intersection here? My interest comes in my lived experiences as a newcomer here in Canada. I didn't know I had a skin color until I moved to Canada. And I always question why I didn't know I had a skin color until I moved to Canada. And that's probably because in my home country, I consider white. Right? But here I'm not. And I'm like, what? And I didn't know that that was important or relevant. And I didn't know that I lost social capital by moving to Canada. Here, I gained social capital in my home country, but I lost social capital here. And I cannot, quote unquote, transfer credits from one place to another. And I try to find out, why do I feel being pushed into one direction? Why do I feel that I'm being boxed, that this is where I belong? Because I've never belonged to where people want me to belong before. So that's part of my interest, and I can talk 2 hours about it, right? And the intersection is because I noticed that language, race, and accent are quite connected, right? And they totally change people's experience. And they will make sense once I explain research. But right now, we're going to move into part B. We're going to talk about languages, right? But for this activity, you have only 2 minutes. You're going to go again into groups, right? And I'm going to answer later the questions that you had with the groups and the videos and etc. This is where things will connect finally, because now we're moving into language. Now we know that the scope of microaggression is going to be language and what happens there, right? I want you to work in groups quickly and answer these 3 questions. What language or languages would you like to learn? If you say, I wouldn't like to learn any language, that's okay. Just share why not. But if there's any language that you would like to learn, share. Like, I would like to learn Z language, whatever language it is. Now, if you speak English as a first language, English as an additional language, if you speak any other language, if you speak, I don't know, Portuguese, if you speak, I don't know, Pasto or whatever, right? I want you to tell me, is there an accent that you like or dislike, right? And if so, which one, right? But tell your group. When you hear somebody speaking and you hear that accent and you're like, that's like music to my ears. Which one is that accent, right? I don't want to hear the ones that you don't like. I just want you to talk about the ones that you like. And then in what occupations or professions should people speak proper English, right? If you're here in Canada and you need to interact with people doing their jobs, in which occupations or professions people should speak proper English, right? And you have, I'm going to stop sharing. Yes, and you have 2 minutes. Do you guys have any questions? Do you understand what you have to do? Yes? Okay, 2 minutes. Time starts now. Set a 2-minute timer.
One sec. 10 minutes. Counting down.
2 minutes.
Siri doesn't understand your accent.
Can I, is there any chance I can be added to a group now? I know I
Of
came in
course.
the first one. Thank you.
All right. Now that we set up the scope, we will go into what the biases are and how they work.
You had a couple questions in the chat. One of them was perceived race. Somebody asked if you meant perceived race as opposed to race.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was actually the only one.
Okay, perfect. And that's really good. I'm trying to find my notes. Okay, perceived race. Yes, because that is the language changes your race. 2.
Okay, so do you have your time? Is your timer doing 2 minutes?
I checked the time. We have 1 minute more.
Okay, perfect.
People will not have enough time to talk about it, but at least people gave it the thought, and that's what they need to do. I noticed that I need to stop sharing before you sending into groups, otherwise my PowerPoint shuts down. So it's
okay. Okay, maybe I'll close because then I think it gives them 60 seconds, right?
Yeah.
Thanks for being the technical whiz, Colleen.
Oh, of course. Well, I didn't mean to take it all away from you.
No, God, like seriously, anything you could do to make the world's most technical idiot
as if you always
take
do a
off my
great job.
shoulders, the better, right?
No, as if you always do a great job. But then Ricardo said, Colleen, can you open the breakout room? So I was like, I can do that. So it's all good.
Sorry.
It works. It's totally good.
The biggest thing is figuring out the math on the fly, right? Because we're kind of all kind of qualitative kind of people.
Yeah.
It's like
Exactly. Not the good math person. Okay, 5 more seconds here. They'll be back.
Yes.
Meeting is being recorded.
Okay, awesome. All right, guys, you're back. All right, again, I'm going to need 3 volunteers to share what your group said. It can be your own personal opinion or what the majority of the group said, if there are some commonalities there. Only 3 volunteers to tell me what languages would you like to learn, to tell me if there is an accent that you like or dislike. I prefer that you pay attention to the like ones I said. And I want you to tell me if in what occupations or professions should people speak proper English.
I can go for my group for the first one. Is that okay?
Certainly.
Yes, thank you. We talked about 2 of us. There were 3 of us in our group wanting to learn Mandarin. My reason was that I'm originally from the Caribbean and my country does a lot of bilateral agreements with China. And I see China as an emerging superpower. And so I find it would be useful to learn Chinese. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Did you guys talk about in what occupations or professions should people speak proper English?
Oh, yes. One group member did. I don't know if they would like to share that, or are you asking me to share on behalf of? Oh, okay, yes, fine. Yes, one person talked about maybe in federal jobs, for example, the CRA or so, where federal government business is taking place, that maybe that might be a suitable place for English to be spoken, proper English, quote unquote. Thank you.
Good, thank you very much. I like that. Now the second group that we'd like to share, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. We also said we loved all accents generally.
All accents generally.
Yes.
I like to hear more. We don't have the time. Is like, do you really like to hear our accents, or is there like one more appealing over the other?
Well, one group member said that any British or English accent they like, but the other two members said we just have an appreciation for all accents. One group member said that they consider it exotic. It suggests to them that someone with an accent has traveled, is learned, and so they're a bit envious that they don't have an accent, quote unquote. But my position is that we all have an accent, Yes. Thank you.
Very good. I love your position, Donna. Good. Thank you. Next, please. The second group.
I can speak for our group since we didn't actually get to me and Anna Marie, so I'll pop up and get ours in. So languages we'd like to learn within our group. There are people who would like to learn lots of languages. I'm included amongst those. Cree in particular was a language that at least a couple of us would like to learn, and I'd also like to add an ASL to that. And then accent-wise, open to many accents, like all accents basically. And then in occupations and professions, people, someone mentioned that service industry people, like people who have to work with the public, it's useful there. And I guess I'd add to that, just as long as people are clear, an accent isn't necessarily a problem, but clarity. My father's very hard of hearing, and so for him, he really struggles if people have any accent at all when he's interacting with them. So anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. That makes a lot of sense. And the last group.
Maybe I can speak for group 3. I think we all agreed we wanted to learn as many languages as possible. Some didn't have any particular likes or dislikes, although we did mention learning languages spoken by First Nations, at least in Saskatchewan, as something we wanted to do. I think we didn't quite get to the proper English, but we just took umbrage with the word proper to begin with. And while we all need to be able to converse with people in healthcare, in classrooms, in the CRA and all, we need people that we can communicate with, all of us together. And we just have to make a better effort to understand each other's accents and not just disregard them.
I love what you said. We need to make this effort, and there is literature about it. And I love what you guys all have shared, right? And I can tell based on your responses, guys, that you are quite sensitive and aware, right, about social discourses, and that is really good. That is a great starting point, actually, for this presentation. So I want to talk to. Now I'm going to talk about how all of this connects. Finally, let's pay attention to the connections, right? Englishes, right? There is not English, it's Englishes, plural. This idea that I have no accent is like, you do have an accent, right? And in different presentations, I usually start by telling people, hello, my name is Ricardo Arisnabarretta, and I am here to tell you that you guys have an accent. Everybody laughs about it. It's like, ha! It's like, no, seriously, guys, you have an accent. They go, ha! It's like, no, seriously, guys, you have an accent. And then they look at me, it's like, are you being serious? Like, have you hurt yourself? And I'm always like, you don't believe me you have an accent? Let's go to my home country. Let's go to my hometown. You will be the one with the accent, not me. right? Accents are related to geography, to location, but they are also related to social status, right? Rich people and poor people will speak differently. And if you pay attention to the videos that I showed to you, you will realize that the news anchor, right, sounded totally different from the civilians saying like, ain't nobody got time for that, right? You realize that Mater is the truck and McQueen, the red car, right? They spoke with different accents, but Mater, who sounded in whatever way you want to describe it, and most people usually describe it as unrefined, uneducated, unintelligent, right? All of those things come from the accent. And to make sure that the character matches the accent, the character needs to be a rusty old car that is unrefined. Those discourses are there everywhere you go, right? And we make assumptions with the language, right? The question here is, who owns the English language then? If there are many Englishes, who owns the English languages and whose English actually counts, right? Who has a say on which one is correct and not correct English, right? The native speaker of English, the one that was born and raised speaking English as a first language, or the non-native speakers of English. The rule says that the grammatical rules are made by the users of the language. So that means the people who use the language decide what is acceptable and what is not acceptable, what is correct or incorrect, proper or not proper language, right? If we want to talk about the users, then we will need to see what the majority of people say or speak, right? How they do it. Well, the majority of people that speak English in the world speak English as a second language. They don't speak English as a first language. There is this idea that the native speakers are better at a language than the non-native speakers. And yes, native speakers have proficiency in a language that they acquired, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they know the grammatical structures of what is right and wrong better, right? Then there are English varieties, right? And how they operate. Are all of these varieties equal? Let's say here, and let's pay attention to discussion. You were saying that, oh, I like all accents of English. Do all accents count in discussion? What happens when somebody goes to a store with a First Nation accent, right? That you can tell that they are First Nation people based on their accent. What happens when they have a phone conversation asking for social services or any other services, and they have this accent? Are they equal? Are they treated equal? Do they get different responses, right? There is this idea, especially in English as a second language, that if you are an English as a second language teacher, you are a real teacher if you only speak English and English is your mother tongue. If you speak another language, well, you are not that pure. You're not what we want, right? And what happens if you speak English, but your background is, I don't know, from Asia, right? It's like, maybe yes, maybe no, we will see, right? You could be a coconut. What is a coconut, right? You look brown outside, but you sound white. You might get the job, right? Now, those things that Ricardo describes are not things that Ricardo decides to say like, oh yeah, this is coming out from Ricardo's head. I'm citing here some of the articles and you will have the references there, right? There is this idea that of white English that exists, right? And it doesn't matter what your skin color is, what your race is, right? What matters is the type of variety of English that you use, because that will make you white middle class. Therefore, you are the kind of person that I can interact with, and you will receive fewer microaggressions. They are usually the ones that come from the BANA countries. Which are the BANA countries? Britain, right? Australia, and North America. If you speak English as a first language and you come from these countries, you are perceived as legitimate. But I don't know, if you speak English as a first language, but you are from India, because India, one of the many official languages that India has is English. They are also a former British colony. They speak English. I have had many people that speak English as a first language, and they speak other languages, but they have the accent from India. And they are sent to take ESL classes. There are people from Nigeria whose first language is English, and they have to take ESL classes, right? Not only because of their race, but also because of their accent. Those two things together makes like you are not a native speaker. Your English doesn't count. You don't own the English language. There is this accent hierarchy in the language that is created with colonial ideas, that the British accent sounds educated, right? That the British accent is a person that is well-spoken, right? That is what we have. And in employment, this affects a lot, because when we give people job opportunities, we give them to the ones that have the right, quote unquote, the right accent. I just need to check my time. We give it to people that have the right accent, these job opportunities, right? So if you are applying for a job in the service industry, right? You're trying to climb the economic ladder, like many people would, but you do have a heavy accent that does not belong to the BANA countries, right? Therefore, I'm not going to give you the job. I prefer the other person that sounds closer to the white middle class that I feel comfortable with, right? And there is a lot of research that talks about it. And one of the researchers that two researchers that talk about this are here mentioned, and it happens everywhere. The idea that public service or people that work for the government, they need to speak proper English, right? The government is related to power, right? To services that provide power. Having a government job is usually tied to power. And interestingly enough, they need to have the proper language, because if they don't speak the proper language, there is not credit for them. Why? There is not credit for the government. Why? There may be a person that may have a different accent, but this person may be better suited for the job. This person will not get it because of the language. You may have a white person with not the right accent, and this person is not as white as the person thinks he or she is, right? It's that the connection between language and race are there, and many people talk about it now. How these views affect people, right? How these views of language hierarchy affect people. Many of those I already discussed and mentioned, right? One of those is language, race, and accent. Amin talks about how, for instance, in Canada, in Toronto, how international students do not want to study with a teacher because the teacher, quote unquote, has an accent, right? And interestingly enough, the teacher did not have an accent. The teacher was brown, right? So if you're brown, I can hear your accent, but if you're white, maybe not so much, right? There are auditory cues that are used to discriminate against Black, Latino, and Asian students, and it happens in academia. It happens in the K-12, right? If you go with vernacular, which is usually described as vernacular Black English in the school, you will be corrected. You will be told that you need to read more. Your parents will be told that they need to help you reading. What they want to do is they want to make sure that you stop sounding like that, and they want you to sound white middle class. And in some cases, they will say like, you have a learning problem, you have a learning disability, and etc. And students who have to give presentations, for instance, in academia and university, they are deduct points because they did not speak properly, right? Because they don't sound properly. So all of this talks about linguicism, right? So what is this linguicism? Linguicism is basically the idea that certain languages are superior, and these are the ones that we need to talk. This happened a lot in Canada with our First Nation people, where they were not allowed to speak their first language. And this continues to happen in the K-12 and in university, right? When we say like, no, 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 this is an English zone only, right? I've been told that this is an English zone only whenever I had to use my first language, because I felt more comfortable using my first language, because it was nobody's business, and because this is my first language and I'm not talking to you, I'm not talking about you, it has nothing to do, and you are far away from where I am, right? And that is linguicism. Linguicism is to put one language on power and give power to this language over the other languages. Checking again my time, because I usually speak about this for so many hours. Now, how does this affect people, right? Some examples of how this affects people are based on research, the ones that I mentioned before, right? And these, I'm going to share some of my personal experience, not because I want to relieve trauma, right? In part because I do want to make sure that you develop some empathy, because many of you have not gone through this, but I don't want this to be a moment, as I think Pauline was talking about this at the beginning, that the group says like, I don't want to hear people's issues. And this is not my issue. These are examples of how microaggression works and operates in daily life. That's it. And I'm using personal examples to make it more relevant for you guys. One of my personal examples is I went with my wife to the US, and I needed to buy to an island destination, right? And I needed to buy something for my kids. So I took whatever I needed to buy for my kids, and I went to pay with my credit card. With my credit card that had my name there written. The person was friendly, extremely friendly with all customers and etc. I arrived and I say, hi, how are you? I like to buy these. And the person changed. And they said, I noticed the person was looking at me up and down, trying to see if I was hiding something or not and whatever. When I tried to pay, the person asked me for my ID. The person did not ask for ID to anybody else, but I needed to prove that I was the person with using that credit card. And I said like, oh, I'm sorry, I don't have my ID with me. I'm not from here. I will not bring my passport with me. Long story short, I was not allowed to buy that. I have to go and tell my wife, I'm sorry, I cannot buy it. And my wife was like, oh, what do you mean that you cannot buy it? She took the thing, she took my credit card and she paid with my credit card. Not ID required, right? Nothing. She was able to pay with credit card. I was, for the rest of the day, trying to manage what had just happened. What did I do wrong? And the only thing that I had done wrong was speak, right? For this person, right? I've been told that I am white until I speak, right? In a job competition that I had once with other co-workers, I was the only one, and this is to teach English as a second language, right? I was the only one who was asked, but how are you going to teach pronunciation? And there was, all the questions were like, but what about pronunciation? And I was like, I don't think the students will necessarily get my pronunciation. I will explain pronunciation. I can explain it and I can make it whenever I need to make it, but I'm not going to change my accent of who I am. And the students will not necessarily acquire my accent, right? In a hospital visit, I've received different service from other white people next to me, family members, right, in accidents. Whenever I have to interact over the phone, things get a little bit trickier for me. I need to prove a little bit more who I am, and people are very passive aggressive with their comments. They go like, but what's your name? I say Ricardo. What did you mean? I'm sorry. My name is Ricardo. What's your name? It's like Ricardo. How do you spell that? R-I-C-A-R-D-O. Oh, Ricardo. It's like, what am I saying? Peter? I'm saying Ricardo, right? Those things happen day to day. But now that we understand what microaggressions are, and now that we understand how there is this connection with the language, right? How this happens to different people, and we made the connection with the video. I want to move into the part C, into how we can address microaggressions, right? For this one, you will have quickly to brainstorm. You have 2 minutes. Again, you will go to your groups, and I want you to think about some of the solutions that you guys have. There will be no time for you to share those solutions. I will present some of those solutions later, some of the suggested solutions, but if in the time for questions, if you want to share some of the solutions that you have that have not been presented, feel free to do so. At this moment, you will work in groups, right? And I want you to come up with 2 or 3 suggestions, right, for these microaggressions. I gave you some examples of microaggressions from personal level to research, right? I explained to you how they work and operate, and they have a big impact. They can be small, but they have a big impact in people's socioeconomic development. They have a big impact in different aspects in their life. They have a big impact in how they receive healthcare services. They have a big impact whether they will advance the economic ladder or not, whether they just granted job opportunities or not, and etc. They seem to be small because I'm not being direct and I'm not using any of the easisms directly, but the impact in people's life is huge, especially when we connect them to language, right? What suggestions would you give when those things happen? You have 2 minutes, right? And you will go to your groups and you may start now.
This meeting is being recorded.
I have to say thank you to the ones who have sent messages through the chat. I read them all, actually, while you guys were in the break room. Very, very, very interesting stories. There are personal stories there that, from the language perspective, for me, make me want to ask you more questions. But I want to move into what we could do with these, and I want to make sure that I touch everything that has been mentioned today first. We will talk about how to better handle microaggressions in the next minute or so. I hope that at this moment nobody felt disrespected so far during the workshop. Again, I'm not saying what is right or wrong. I'm just sharing research on these, and I'm sharing my personal experience to make it more personal, right? There are different life circumstances that happen, and sometimes people do not mean to hurt one another, but sometimes people are going through their own personal struggles, and that's how people react. So we need to pay attention to that. Sometimes is a person having a hard moment in life. Everybody has issues, and you need to know how to find the balance and to take care of yourself, and we will talk about it, right? I try to avoid during the workshop people sharing their own personal stories, because I don't want people to relieve trauma, because in many cases this has trauma. Whether this should or should not be taught in classes for children is something that I really don't know. It's not my research interest, and I think that it's an interesting topic to explore. Accent does make it difficult to communicate with other people, and I'm not asking people to stop paying attention to accents. Accents exist, right? You can't distinguish that the person comes from another part of the world, and I don't want people to pretend that, oh, you don't have an, oh, Ricardo, I don't hear your accent. You don't have an accent. I do have an accent. I'm not from here, not born and raised, and I came here as an adult, right? Don't be condescending, trying to say like, oh, but you don't have an accent. I do have an accent, right? And we will talk about intelligibility here in a second, right? Yes, the perceived race, right? Like, are you white? You're white until you speak. There was one of the comments that somebody mentioned. Somebody in the group at the beginning of the workshop talked about, oh, I want to learn Chinese because I see China as a new superpower. We can see the direction that this is going, right? The importance that money, right, economical development is associated to language and power, and the importance to do that, right? Somebody talked about federal jobs, and people that work in federal jobs need to speak proper English because language is associated to power. I'm not saying that this is right or wrong. I'm just letting you know how this is connected. Other people talk about the importance of learning Cree or indigenous language in Saskatchewan. I do believe that that's really important. That's how we keep knowledge, right? And I also wanted to make the connection with how First Nation people are usually treated in Saskatchewan because of their accent, right? If they want to gain legitimacy, they need to pay attention to their accent. I think Andrew Starset has one very interesting research with a child that one of his parents was First Nation, the other parent was white. The child looked like a white European person, this child, but the child spoke with the accent from the reserve, right? And whenever he was in school, he noticed the child talks about this. The child was like 10 years old, and the child says that I noticed that if I sound like my classmates, the teacher gives me less homework, so I need to switch codes. And whenever I go to the reserve and I sound like my classmates, my community makes fun of me because of the way I sound. So the child, being 10 years old, learned to switch codes because he knew that the reactions were going to be different. Now, how to do this? We don't have time to share your thoughts because of time is always our worst enemy, right? Unfortunately, one of the things that we need to do when we want to respond to microaggressions is, should I respond? Should I clarify? Should I correct? Should I educate? Should I argue? That is going to be the first thing that you need to think of when you hear this microaggression. It is not fair, right, when you will receive this microaggression because you probably want justice to prevail. But there are other things that are important to consider, right? If I do respond, safety would be a concern. Would I be in danger, right? If somebody is committing microaggression, but you notice that the person is becoming from microaggression to direct physical aggression, is this the right moment for you to try to educate the person? Will we have the time to educate? Like, will this lead to, or would this lead to an argument that I need to have? Is the person ready to hear what I have to say? Is it ready for me to educate, to clarify, to respond? The person is not willing to hear. Should I do that or not, right? Will this affect my relationship with the person in a positive, negative way? Do I need it right now? Do I need to have something before this happens? Because the idea is that we don't want the other person to feel bad, right? With a connotation, but we don't want also to continue receiving this microaggression, right? Do you have enough time to educate that person? Because if the person says like, Ricardo could do it, but he's Latino, so I don't know, right? It's like, should we at that moment educate the person? Will we have enough time to say like, hey man, what you're saying comes from these colonial ideas, and do you have the time or not, right? Because if you're not going to finish that, you need to think about it. Would I regret not saying anything? And perhaps this is one of the most important. How would you feel after that if you leave things there? Would you regret? Would you feel bad because you didn't say anything? Would you feel bad because you did not stand up for somebody or not, right? Again, there are no prescribed answers, right? They are all up to you. But if you decide to address it, right, one should consider asking for clarification. Do not respond immediately accusing the other person because the person may not be aware of their own biases, right? Ask for clarification. Say, what did you mean when you said this, right? What did you imply, right? Separate the intent, right? The connotation from the impact, right? Was the intent to hurt you or not to hurt you? It's ignorant speaking and you just need to educate the person, right? Sometimes people are not aware, and that is really difficult to do, right? Sharing one's own views without attacking the other person is very important. If you're going to go into an argument about you are doing this, and then the other person is going to be like, why are you attacking me? And you are being in risk, it's going to take you nowhere, right? The one that I like the most is creating an ethical space of engagement, right? The idea of an ethical space of engagement is like when there is this disconnect, this friction already, because you're doing something that hurts me and I'm about to do something that is going to hurt you probably because you're not aware of this. In between, there is this space where we need to engage ethically, meaning I don't want to hurt you as a person. I want to discuss this idea until we both feel comfortable and we feel that we are being fair to one another, right? They are really difficult, but that required conversation and negotiation. Usually in organizations, that means creating spaces to deliver workshops like this, right? Where people will have the opportunity to talk about it. And it's really important for people to talk about their own experiences as much as we don't like them. Sometimes they reveal relieved trauma. It's really important because other people can develop empathy and become a little bit more sensitive, right? I'm going to tell you also what has worked for me well so far. Compassion. When somebody is being microaggressively hurting me, right? I try to understand that the person does not have the level of understanding of their actions yet. And I'm sorry for their circumstances, right? This helps me to try to calm down myself, right? I am direct with my responses. I learn to have a voice, right? And I don't hide my emotions. I don't try to like, yes, I'm Latino, no, right? I have also learned to feel proud of my heritage and myself, my accent. I embrace it. I'm not ashamed of it. I'm not ashamed to say that I have an accent when I speak English. English is not my first language. Something that has also worked for me is having some self-care, having a community with people that you can talk about those things, right? Because those things happen to you, right? Another thing that has worked for me is education, obviously. What I suggest the group to do regarding language is what you guys have mentioned before, focus on intelligibility. The problem is not that you have an accent. The problem is, can I understand what you're saying or not? Can the message be delivered, right? And for this, you, as the listener, need to pay attention to have plurilingual ears, which means you have the responsibility to train your ear to hear people from different accents as well, right? To say like, some accents are hard to hear, AKA my language variety is superior than the other one. It's like, no. You have the responsibility to try to hear, like, what have you done that you are not used to those accents? And I'm not saying that you should be comfortable with all of them, but if there's one that you don't feel comfortable with, you should try to understand and see what you can do to try to understand those. In academic settings, for the ones that are in academia or in work-related settings, I think it's very important that you see English as a lingua franca. You speak English, the other person speaks German, you're going to use English to communicate, to get something done. You shouldn't use English because you're superior than the other person, right? If you cannot use German, well, the German speaking person is trying to use English right now to accommodate, right? Think about English as a lingua franca. I think that's going to be very, very important. To summarize, today we have talked about microaggressions, what they are, right? We said the scope only within language because there are gender-based, age-based, nationality-based, and blah, 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 blah. There are so many, right? How microaggressions manifest I mentioned them, but I narrowed all of them into a specific intersection, language, right? I want you to know how to respond to some microaggressions, and I provided some options. You guys had some extra in your groups. And now we're gonna go to the questions if you have any. Before I do that, I need to show you my references. These are some of the references. Well, these are the references that I mentioned in today's presentation. I don't mind sharing those if you want to. Feel free to send an email to Lynn, and I will share all these references for you to see. And that's it. Questions? We have 4 minutes. I've made it in time. I think Echu has a question. Did I pronounce it correctly?
Yes, you did.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, so Ricardo, first of all, thank you very much for this presentation. And
oh, I lost connection, or Echu, are you there? Am I the one who lost connection, or?
We can hear you. I can hear you at least.
Oh, thank you. And can you guys hear Echu?
No, unfortunately not at this time.
All right. So Lynn, if you could send a message in the chat to Echu to let him know that we cannot hear him. And I think there is another question. Another person had a question, and that is Terry?
Yes, hello.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for your presentation. I was the one who commented about not hearing complaints. I didn't finish my comment. White people who give the microaggressions was who I said I don't want to hear from. Anyway, my question is, because there are so many other newcomers in Canada, what kind of a question should I ask when relating to where are you from? What if they are Canadian? What would the question be?
That's a very good question, and I have actually heard that question a few times before. I try to separate the connotation, the intention, right? Always, which is one of the things that I mentioned. If somebody asked me, where are you from, right? Or where are you originally from? I have no problem with that, because I can see that the person, I particularly have no problem, because I can see that the person is literally trying to engage with me with a conversation, right? So I have no problem with that. The problem becomes when maybe the person is actually born and raised here in Canada, and we're making these assumptions that the person is not from Canada, right? Or when we put an accent when the person does not have an accent just because the person does not look white European, right? In most cases. And I think that what I would feel more comfortable is to make sure that the question addresses the intention. And I will say, oh, tell me a little bit about you, right? And then the person will share whatever they feel comfortable with. The person will say, oh, I was originally born, or I'm originally from, right? Or I lived, and the person will share whatever they feel comfortable with, right? Because sometimes the person is going to feel like, oh, are you asking already if I was born here or not, right? Is this where this is going to go? But if you say like, tell me a little bit about you, right? And I think that's for me, a question that addresses the intention. Did that answer your question, Terry?
Yes, thank you, Ricardo.
No problem.
Excellent.
Any other questions, my friends?
Thank you for addressing that. I think perhaps maybe in your research, something to consider is the differences between provinces as well. Originally being born and raised in Ontario, I find there's a difference in terms of culture and how things are addressed. Just visiting different provinces and now living in Regina, but that's all.
That is an excellent observation. And in fact, in my own research, I am specifically talking about Saskatchewan, right? Because of two main reasons. The first one is that I know that the culture in Saskatchewan as a province, geographically located, is very different from bigger urban centers, right? So that's really good. And the second is because I cannot assume that the rest of Canada has the same accent, right? And the same language variety, how they use it, and etc. So yes, you pay attention to something that I'm doing in my research, and the reason why I'm thankful is because that means that you engaged with my talk, because that's exactly what I'm doing in my research. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you.
No problem.
Sorry, one more question. Where can we find more information on your research?
That's a good question. They said that do not ask a PhD student when will they finish. But my master of research was in the internationalization of higher education, and I did touch language and power there, and it's available for free, right? I'm the only Arisnabarretta probably at the university, most likely at the University of Regina, and most likely in North America that has come with research in language and power. There are very few people with this last name. And the other one that I mentioned is literally becoming, what I'm talking to you guys is literally becoming part of my defense. No, the exam that I need to give, right? It's part of the literature review, so it's not published yet, and I cannot do it because otherwise I will need to cite myself. Okay, thank you. Donna, you have a question.
Yes, thank you so much, Ricardo, for the talk. It has been very, very informative. I'm wondering if this is a part one or a part two in a series of talks. Like, I'll be very interested to hear more, or even more topics around microaggressions, specifically in the workplace and so on, because there are some assumptions that we go with, and we always think that the work must be with the immigrants and the person with the perceived accent to do all the work, because we're here in Canada and the average white Canadian should not have to do any work. And so those are the kinds of thinking that I would like to see broken. And so I'm just wondering if there are other opportunities, whoever is in charge of putting forward this presentation, if there are other opportunities, other talks around microaggression that I can register for. And thank you so very much again.
No problem, Donna. I think Lynn will be able to provide an answer to that. Microaggression is a huge topic, right? And to pay attention to what part of the microaggression topic people would like to hear about, I think that it's a great feedback for Lynn. Mine was in the language perspective, and within the language perspective and work-related stuff and how this happens at work, there is so much, right? But going into that rabbit hole, people usually need to have some background before, right? And as you said, there could be a part two, and perhaps Lynn will be able to provide more answer if you guys send her some feedback. I'm gonna move to the next question. Gord, is that correct?
Yes. Thank you for your presentation, Ricardo. I would like to also suggest that the comment that made between the difference between provinces, I would also suggest there's a difference between urban and rural within Saskatchewan as well.
Yes, and as I said during the presentation, Accents are related to socioeconomic backgrounds and geographical location, right? So if you are in a big city or if you're in a small city, you're changing your geographical location. Therefore, you will have a different accent, right? And you're probably also changing your socioeconomic status, right? Therefore, you will have a different accent. Basically, it's like belonging to a club, right? And I know that you belong, right? Based on the way you speak, right? You need to sound like you belong to this group. Otherwise, I will have my barriers up. Good. That is a very good observation, Gordon. Thank you. All right. I think that we had all the questions that we needed to have. If there are more questions, feel free to do that.
Thank you, everybody, for attending. I will be following up with an email with the information from Ricardo's slides, probably this afternoon, and also with a copy of the recording. And Donna, thank you for your suggestion. We'll definitely look at that in the future to do some more in this line. And in the email that I sent to you, I will send you information on the upcoming, our next workshop taking place next month, which is how to be a good ally. So we'll have a panel of people that will be speaking about, from their perspective, from different backgrounds, about what they hope to get from people, you know, if it comes to microaggressions or anything, really just, so we're hoping that's going to be very interesting. So I hope you all have a great day. And please, if you have ideas for other programs or things that the Community Engagement and Research Center can offer, my door is always open. And thank you, and have a wonderful rest of your week.
And yeah, thank you, everybody. I will continue reading some of the chat messages, and I will contact whoever asked me to contact them back. Okay. Thank you.